Fascinating, huh? I stopped a video that I was just watching that I guess was done this morning with Tino, Taino, at Galactic Talk, who had Gene Decode on there, and he was describing an experience that he had. I with his wife and some students, I guess, or a student that he was with in Colorado, up in the mountains. So this would be like present day time. And he was describing, for example, how there haven't been any grizzlies in that part of the mountain, the terrain, the consciousness terrain, since 1816 as a result of the Civil War, people moving off their plantations, grizzlies were being hunted. And he mentioned how you're not going to find any grizzlies unless you go up into Yellowstone. They're up in Yellowstone in Wyoming. I've been there with them before. And up into Glacier National Park, up in the northwestern Montana, up where the Blackfeet are. So he's describing how they were setting up their camp with their tent and a sleeping bag and what have you, because apparently one of the people that was with him was concerned about grizzly bears, okay? And Gene had mentioned about, well, there's mostly black bears, and I've been around a lot of black bears, particularly up on the Klamath National Forest in Siskiyou County, on the border, the northern border of California and the southern border of Oregon. So if you want to go hang out and experience a lot of black bears, I can certainly tell you where to go, because it has the highest population density per square mile of black bears, and that's a place called Happy Camp, which is off California Highway 96 on the Klamath River. So, and that gets into all the fires using their dew weapons that, from, say, Mendocino north of San Francisco all the way up into Oregon. All those were deliberately set, so that's a lot of bear country in there. Okay, so they're burning down mirrors. So these are major crimes against all of creation itself. This is evil stuff. Okay, and that's what they are. They're evil. They're universe killers. Make no mistake about it. They're universe killers. Okay, so what do you do with a universe killer? You burn it off. That's what we do. We burn it off. Okay? It simply means that's the vampire chasing the artist. The original sound musician. Okay? But be that as it may, and I've experienced this, so I'm going to explain this from being a monopole, mated chip, if you will, high-speed motor tetrahedron. Works a little differently than the way he described it. So I'm going to sort of show you the translation of that by how I experience what I do versus how he experienced what he describes. Okay? Where this is when you get into the manifestation side of things, because the power of your energy to be able to, if you will, use that energy and thus as if you have just moved into that particular timeline, because the power of your energy has a capacity to do that. And you can think of this in some ways what we call phase locking or phasing in and out, because the amount of energy that is holding, if you will, that timeline in place is still there unless it's been completely wiped out of all the memories that represent the energy that is holding that timeline in place. In other words, that live stream is still running. Okay? Hasn't been burned off. And this is where you sort of get into what we call when you think of being a master librarian, you've got a key to the whole universe, the universal template. And you realize if there are people in present day, like right now, that have cellular memories that's held to that particular timeline that's still held to their record, that's in their memory. And then you realize that if that got wiped, then it's going to change the progression, the cellular regeneration, if you will, from one generation to the next. It's all connected to other cells related to that particular family and all the families that we're all experiencing each other on that timeline together. This is when you get into the multiple timeline stuff. So, for example, what's in your mind, which is related to energy, what you experience on a bandwidth perception, okay, of the reaction state of everything that you're experiencing as the opening and closing of a magnetic circuit between two poles on a planet. Okay, now I've covered this before about how when I came in here, and you're running a high-speed vortex, it's like a high-speed mower, and the way that integration works, which means bringing everything back to the one. I'm the one. Okay, which means now you're going to experience what love is. Okay, so what do you think that does if you have the ability to go back to, if you will, zero, as if there isn't any time, which means now when you're going in through multiple timelines that are running, you're bringing time wave zero in there wherever you go. Because you're balanced. That's androgynous. That's perfect balance. The center point of a sphere, the law of least efforts, that's the law of spheres. Center point of any star. Burn it off, right? So now they're experiencing what love is. Okay? So this is where we can rip major holes into their simulations after simulations after simulations, which means ripping holes in their veil as a result of the artificial use of deadlight technology as a result of fracturing souls. Anunnaki Draco, right? And their alliances. And all the other beings that don't live in peace with us, which is the one. Love goes on forever. So he was describing how all of a sudden he began noticing that the terrain had changed. What was once being experienced is no longer being experienced in the same way. What that means is that the movie that he's in is not the same movie, projector, holographically. So now he sees on the ground what is, as I remember, a 14-inch, roughly somewhere around there, paw print. Whoops. Wait a second. He just remembered telling somebody there hasn't been any grizzlies here. He went back in time. Now he's in that time zone as a result of that in a physical way. So now the physical present, which means he took all the data with him. I mentioned this before. It's like sending yourself in an email packet, right? Beam me up, Scotty. So you're phasing in and out between events, space vectors, time vectors of events that are occurring, that have occurred because it's already happened. See, when he experiences that print on the ground, the bear that put it there, that means that already happened. So he's experiencing something that happened in the past. And these are all the loopers. These are all the loops that are running through within simulations, within simulations, within simulations, within simulations. So, for example, the way that I explain this, the way that I do it as a high-speed accelerator, a hyperdrive, an exceptionally excited kid, the branch of mankind, one and Eve. So right down the road here, for example, there's a place called Wapahoehoe Beach Point here on the Big Island. Most people that are familiar with this island have at some point in time, if they've gotten to talk to any of the locals about the energy on the island, and they want to have healing energy, they want to experience healing energy, Wapahoehoe is one of the places that people go to because that's how I found out. So the very first day that I got there, I drove down there on a weekday in the middle of the day. Sun was out, bright sunny sky with a few clouds, and there wasn't hardly anybody there. And this sits right out on a point where you can see the sun come up in the morning, see the sun come down in the evening with Maui. Not every day, but most days. Either way, you can see the sun come up and see the sun go down without moving, right there on the point. So as I drove up into the middle of this big, huge, grassy area, it was probably maybe a little longer than a football field wide, and maybe a football on a field half, going between north and south, if you will. It's a fairly large area. So I pulled up, stopped the van, opened the door, and as soon as I stepped out onto the grass, I began bawling, and bawled for about 20 minutes. I was experiencing an enormous amount of trauma. When I look around me, I'm seeing what I saw when I drove in. Sunny day, in other words, the landscape has not changed, But what I'm experiencing is something that happened there at that spot. So my vortex was accessing 1947 without physically being there. So what's happening is the amount of light, which is a purifier, I'm a purifier. The light is purifying what happened there, so that that particular timeline that's held in memory, that's on record, is now being cleared for them to experience as if it's a memory wipe, to bring it back, to integrate it back to zero. Dial 0 ohms. So the eternal love, the purified light, is purifying what happened there to release those souls. Because now they're experiencing the one. They're experiencing true love, which is unconditional love. So I had planted my bare feet on the grass there, and I do a particular energetic mantra in which to do that. And it works. So for the next few days, it was cleared. That's what a polarity integrator does, a monopole, is to reintegrate everyone back to experience what love is and know that's the energy that began with love. Life unfolds with love. We celebrate all living spirit, all living life that exists within the all creation with what we are, which is what love is. It goes on forever, loving all of you. Okay? That's how polarity integration works. Works a little differently because it means that wherever I am, I'm experiencing what I am, which is what love is. So you realize as a multi-dimensional, multi-density level, it means anything that I'm connected with, which means you're connected to the all creation, they're experiencing what we are, which is what love is. That's called polarity integration. We bring everything back into the one, which is what love is, which is what the law is, which is the law of spheres, which is the law of least effort. It means I don't have to think about it to be what love is. That love is there. That's the genius of it. That's higher intelligence. And what drives the highest intelligence is you're on fire to create the most beautiful world you can't possibly imagine unless you've been there to experience it with that much love. The purity of that light. That's right. It's the purity of that light. That's what it means to be a purifier. Most girls that I met know exactly what a pure heart is because they're mothers. They know what unconditional love is, which means that's what they feel in their heart and their soul for new life that is within their womb. The same thing that is a goddess. You're in the womb of a goddess. Okay? So it's no different than you being infected with parasites in your colon. She's infected with parasites as intruders into her womb, feeding on her energy the same way they feed on ours. That's a fallen spirit. That's your dead light artificial intelligence. It doesn't exist without our real light. We're the ones that keep it running. Get the picture? Have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourselves.